This is Ask a Couples Counsellor, a show that answers all the relationship questions you're too afraid to ask. On the show, we'll take your questions and give you the tools you need to build trust and intimacy with your partner. I'm your host, Neha Kapoor. I'm a registered clinical counsellor and psychotherapist, and I'm really passionate about helping couples navigate the challenges that we all go through. Because after all, every relationship encounters some stormy weather now and then. Hello and welcome to another episode of Ask the Couples Counsellor. Most people think love is about compromise. But the truth, love doesn't ask you to shrink. It asks you to be seen. And yet, so many of us wake up years later, unrecognizable even to ourselves, carrying resentment, hiding truths, and performing instead of living. This episode is for anyone who's ever looked in the mirror and thought, who even am I anymore? We're talking about reclaiming yourself in long-term love, facing the darkness behind negativity, and navigating identity when it doesn't fit neatly into a box. Listen closely, because relationships aren't meant to make you smaller. They're meant to wake you up. All right, let's get into it. Our first question for today comes from Richard in Sydney. Let's have a listen to Richard's question.
My partner and I have been together for almost 20 years, and in that time, I think I've become a much more negative person overall. I want to be more positive and optimistic because I know it's hard on my partner, and honestly, I really don't recognize or like the person I've become. How do I turn this around?
Richard, when someone tells me they've become more negative over the years, I don't see a bad attitude. I see emotional burnout that's gone unspoken for too long. You don't just wake up one day cynical or irritable. It's a slow leak. It's what happens when disappointment builds, needs aren't voiced, and emotional repair doesn't happen. The negativity is just the symptom. The real issue is the weight you've been carrying without the tools or space to unpack it. I tell couples all the time, you can't positive think your way out of emotional disconnection. You can't just slap gratitude over years of resentment. That's like spraying air freshener in a room full of mold. It might smell better for a bit, but the rot is still underneath. You have to face what's been festering. So the first step isn't to try and be more positive. The first step is to understand what hardened you. What have you stopped talking about? What hurts have you buried because it felt easier to shut down than risk another argument? Negativity is often grief in disguise. Grief for how you thought things would be, for the version of yourself that was more hopeful, for the emotional safety you've lost along the way. When this shows up in my therapy room, I get couples to stop chasing the happy version of themselves and instead look honestly at what hasn't been said. I ask them to name what they miss about themselves and about each other, not in a performative way, but in a real, raw way. Because when you strip away the armor, what's left is usually someone who's exhausted from trying to hold it all together. You know how you can turn this around? Not by becoming the positive partner, but by becoming the authentic one. The one who can say, I've been hurting, instead of lashing out. The one who can ask for comfort instead of withdrawing. That's where the optimism comes back, not as a mood, but as a result of emotional honesty. You don't need to be the sunshine in the relationship. You just need to stop living in the storm alone. I hope that answers your question, Richard. Our second question for today comes from Ethan in Sydney. Let's have a listen to Ethan's question.
I guess you could say my question is how you maintain your own individuality and your own personal identity when you're in a relationship.
Ethan, the question of individuality in relationships comes up in my therapy room all the time, especially with couples who've been together for years. Somewhere along the way, one or both partners start saying things like, I don't even know who I am anymore. or everything I do revolves around us or the kids. And it's heartbreaking because it's rarely intentional. It happens quietly through compromise, through caretaking, through love. You start merging routines, values, and priorities until your sense of self starts to blur. But here's the truth I tell them: real intimacy doesn't require you to lose your individuality, it asks you to bring it. A relationship is at its strongest when both people are still evolving as individuals. When you have your own passions, opinions, and pursuits, you keep bringing new energy back into the relationship. That's what keeps it alive. Two people continuously rediscovering each other because they're still growing. Maintaining individuality means honoring your separateness as much as your togetherness. It means you still do the things that remind you who you are outside of us. It's nurturing your friendships, taking time alone without guilt, saying no when something doesn't feel right for you, and having the courage to express a different perspective, even if it creates friction. That's not disconnection, that's authenticity. And authenticity is the foundation of emotional safety. What I often see is that people confuse self abandonment for love. They think being a good partner means always adapting, accommodating, or keeping the peace. But when you betray yourself to maintain closeness, that closeness eventually feels empty. You start to resent your partner, not because they took something from you, but because you gave up parts of yourself to keep them comfortable. So I remind people individuality is not a threat to your relationship. It's what gives it texture, depth, and movement. When you keep growing as your own person, you invite your partner to grow too. And that's what creates long term attraction. Two people who keep meeting each other at new levels of self awareness and strength. Because if you have to lose yourself to keep your relationship, you eventually lose both. The goal isn't to become one, the goal is to become known by yourself and by each other. I hope that answers your question, Ethan. Our last question for today comes from Sally in Sydney. Let's have a listen to Sally's question.
I've only ever dated men in the past, but recently I realized that I'm attracted to women as well. So it's great. I just feel a bit like a fraud because I've never dated women, and it feels different than dating men because women act differently. And I'm kind of having a hard time with navigating these new relationship dynamics. And I don't know, kind of just feeling like maybe I'm not gay enough. Any help would be appreciated. Thank you.
Sally, what you're describing is actually far more common than people realize. So many women are beginning to explore their sexuality later in life, not because it suddenly appeared, but because they finally feel safe enough to question old scripts about who they're supposed to love. There's nothing fraudulent about that. There's only truth unfolding at its own pace. You're not less queer just because you've had different experiences. Sexuality isn't a resume you have to prove. It's a spectrum of connection, desire, and authenticity. It doesn't need to be justified, and it certainly doesn't need to be compared. The idea of being gay enough is just another form of perfectionism. It's the same voice that tells us we have to earn our belonging. But belonging, especially in your own identity, is not earned, it's claimed. When I see this in therapy, I tell my clients to stop treating this like an exam and start treating it like a discovery. You're learning a new emotional language. And yes, women often connect differently. The pace, the communication, the emotional openness, it can all feel unfamiliar at first. But that's not a sign you don't belong. It's a sign you're growing. My advice: lead with curiosity, not labels. Ask yourself, what feels safe? What feels electric? What feels true? Let the experience shape your understanding rather than trying to fit into someone else's definition of queerness. You don't have to perform your identity. You just have to live it. Because here's the thing: there is no one way to be gay or be straight or be anything. There's only the way that you show up when you stop trying to fit in and start trying to feel real. And if I can leave you with one truth, it's this. You're not late, you're not confused, you're just finally becoming honest. I hope that answers your question. All right, that's it for today. And before I go, if you have any burning questions you want answered, send them to novoempowercounselling@gmail.com. Let's navigate this journey together because better relationships start with understanding. I can't wait to hear from you. You've been listening to Ask a Couples Counselor, a show that answers all the relationship questions you're too afraid to ask. This show is produced by Novo Empower Counselling. We provide a range of services, including couples counselling, individual counselling, and online counselling. To find out more, visit our website novoempowercounselling.com.au. This show was produced with strategy and production support from Wavelength Creative. To make sure you don't miss an episode of Ask a Couples Counselor, be sure to subscribe to or follow the show in your podcast app. And while you're there, I'd love it if you could leave me a 5-star review. It really helps others find the show. I'm your host, Neha Kapoor, and I'll see you in the next episode.